Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Executive Committee meeting for the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. Mr. Brown, you have a quorum, yet we do not have Ms. Mary Tarver or Mr. Stephen Wynn with us just yet.
Thank you, Courtney. Welcome, everybody. Let's give them just a few more minutes. Let's say about 5 more minutes. And if they don't share them, we'll start. Okay, everyone, welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Executive Committee. We thank everyone for being able to attend today. Thank you to our members of the committee for being able to take the time this afternoon to be with us to conduct today's business. Thank you all. And the first thing I want to do, Courtney, could you put the agenda up on the screen, please, so that those who are watching can have it in front of us? I think that's helpful. Thank you. So I will read our mission statement. Do you have that available to put up for me, Courtney? Thank you, so they can see it as well. Okay, and so the mission statement for the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council is as follows: to increase independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion for Louisianans with developmental disabilities by engaging in advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. And do you have those ground rules available for me as well? I'll go over those. Okay, our teleconference meeting protocols are as you see before you. The council meetings shall be accessible by Zoom and live streamed on YouTube, which we currently are at the moment. Council or committee members will participate in via Zoom and shall be considered present when they display their live video feed of their face with the first and last name. Have microphones muted unless called upon by the chairperson. Electronically raise your hand to request the chair recognize them to speak. Once recognized to speak by the chair, their microphone shall be turned on. After speaking, the microphone shall be returned to mute. Guests may participate via Zoom or observe meetings live on YouTube. All public meetings shall be recorded and may be made available on the council's YouTube channel as determined appropriate by the chairperson. Public comment submitted during a meeting via any form shall be considered. During Zoom meetings, guests may electronically raise their hand to request to comment. Upon being recognized to speak by the chair, their microphone should be turned on. After speaking, the microphone shall be returned to mute. Post comments relevant to the item under consideration in the chat box. Post comments during the live stream of the meeting on the council's YouTube channel, and you see the link below. Public comments of a person's character will not be heard. If the comment continues after being asked to stop by the chairperson, council staff may be instructed to, and the meeting of the chairperson, you may be instructed. I lost the place there. I'm sorry. Okay. You might be asked by me to cease speaking. And the executive committee will be the determiner of that along with me in today's case. Okay. Let's move forward. Can you put the agenda back on the screen, please? Thank you. All right, so that's the ground rules for today and our mission. And if no one has any objections, the summaries of our last two meetings prior to this one, you see the link there. I hope you've all had time to review it. If no one has any objection, those will be approved by acclamation. So did I hear any objections to the October 20th, 2020 meeting and the December 2nd, 2020 meeting? And again, your summaries are linked there if you need a moment to read over either of those or both of them. Hearing no objections, the summary shall be entered into the record. Having passed by a unanimous consent vote. Okay, before I get into the rest of the agenda, I want to change things up on the order just a bit. Is Lillian with us? Courtney?
I believe she is. She might not be on panelist mode yet.
Okay, switch her to panelist and let's let her speak to us before we begin the rest of the business. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for being with us and asking to speak with us today. And you have the floor.
Cool. So I first want to start out with a story. And at first, I'm sure everyone will be confused of why I'm telling this story, but I promise it will come full circle. So about a year ago, I went to LRS to try to obtain employment. I had gotten to be 18. It was about that time to transition to the workforce. And I was referred to a vocational counselor, or to have a vocational evaluation to see what would be appropriate with my disability, with my interests, with my experience, et cetera, et cetera. And it actually ended up being really bad. I was verbally told that I was basically unemployable. In the final report, they said that I should probably just stick with being a volunteer as a career for the rest of my life. And also that my career aspirations in disability policy was unobtainable, and that I wasn't super educated on what disability policy was, because if I were, I would understand that the physical demands of the job would be too much for my disability. And oh, please excuse my cat. She has joined us now. That is Councilmember Cecilia. And now she's rolling around. I'm sorry. It's very distracting. So yeah, so that evaluation ended up being really, really bad. And I walked away from it feeling very dehumanized. And it was very harrowing because it was a reflection of everything I had been told as a person with a disability throughout my entire life. People have questioned my parents as to why they were even giving me an education, because people assumed I was too disabled to learn. People wondered why I am going into college, again, because of the severity of my disability. And this eventually shifted to a realization that none of this was true. You know, I can still have a life with disability. I can still go to college with a disability, have a job with a disability. And the foundation for realizing that this was inaccurate was my community, right? I'm a part of this really beautiful disability community who's incredibly supportive of me, understands that I can do things because and with my disability, not despite my disability. And my story isn't unique. I think we all know that all the systems built for people with disabilities really aren't functional for people with disabilities. They're not built for self-determination or, you know, people with disabilities being happy in their job. It's just checking off the box, okay, we rehabilitated them. But not all kids have access to this support or community. And I don't tell this story to specifically, you know, bash LRS. I think it's a systemic issue. It's across every state agency. And it's systemic, and we need to start addressing this. And so the thing about a youth leadership forum is that it offers this community and this support and the how to get a job that will make you happy with your disability and how to have an independent life. It offers the community that says you can do this, that you're worth an education, that you're worth a job, that you're worth living independently, you're worthwhile, you're worthy of investment, right? And so I think we need to start moving in the direction of creating a YLF so kids here have this opportunity. And not only will this benefit our youth, but it's also going to be really beneficial for our council as well. I think we've all seen the fatigue that has encompassed our council over the past 4 years. I see us getting tired and burnt out, and that's understandable. These meetings have started to become kind of draining, right? So we need to start getting fresh blood in here, new people with new ideas, and kids and advocates that not necessarily are weighed down by the past. We need to start building a foundation for a new vision of the council, one that's a little bit more positive and welcoming and productive. And so YLF really has a lot of potential to benefit everyone more than just our youth. So the reason why I'm speaking to you today is because I would like to request that we form a committee specifically to create a YLF. We need a committee because there's a lot that goes into planning one of these things, right? It's generally about a 5-day, almost summer camp-like event where youth get the crash course on self-advocacy, disability history and culture, lessons about sexuality, everything that you need in your toolbox as a person with a disability. And I want to request a committee too, because like I said, there's a lot of planning that goes into this, but we're also probably going to need to look at obtaining federal grants to get this off the ground, because YLFs are also not cheap to start. I'd say if we have about 20 delegates, we're looking about $30,000. And you see, whenever we had a YLF here in Louisiana from 2000 to 2005, it abruptly ended once Hurricane Katrina started and Governor Jindal came into office, which, the hurricane just decimated the economy, and then the disability community was floundering. And the reason why the YLF stopped is because they didn't have a sustainability plan. They were reliant on DD Council funds and state funds. So the federal grants will come in as our sustainability plan, and so we're not really dependent on the state of the state, because I think we all know the state's a little unpredictable with its budget sometimes. I think we should also add a YLF committee into our FY 2022 plan, so that's in stone. And I also want to start the discussion of having a staff member specifically for self-advocacy and youth advocacy. Not necessarily like right now, but start having the discussion, because when we get closer to actually hosting a YLF, we'll need that extra help and that extra expertise on board. So I think that's my spiel. If y'all have any questions, I'm sure I can answer them. So yeah.
Oops, excuse me, y'all. Thank you, Lillian. Appreciate your passion there, and I know this is a big issue you are very passionate about and knowledgeable about, and I'm certainly willing to work with you in every way we can to make it happen. As you did rightly point out, it's something we can't do extremely quickly. There'll be some things that go into it as far as research of how much the cost would be and what exactly we would need in terms of to financially sustain it. But that's certainly doable, and you have my commitment that we'll do that. Self-determination committee can also look into some of these issues as it relates to starting a committee if they are so inclined to do. But I'm willing to form an ad hoc committee when we get to the point of having what the cost would be, and if it's a good idea to pursue federal grant money, and if we can do that, we'll certainly start that process sooner rather than later. If anybody on the committee or anyone has any further comments or questions, I yield the floor.
Mr. Chair, this is
Yes.
Hyacinth speaking.
Yes, you have the floor, Madam Vice Chair.
Ms. Dejan, thank you so much for your presentation on youth leadership. It is so needed for this council. We already know that we do not have an adequate number of or the right amount of number of self-advocates on our council. And for you to present this information to us, we are grateful for that. We want to fully support you in this initiative, and I want to be able to share with the executive committee that this is something that I believe we should act quickly on. I don't think this is something that we should delay to different meetings. And so certainly I hope that our executive committee report would include some more discussion with the full council to ensure that this youth leadership initiative takes off and we hit the ground running with this. What I do not want is for this to just be delayed. And so I'm asking that the executive committee bring this issue to the full council for consideration.
Okay, we don't need a motion to do that. I'll do that. That's not, I mean, let me be clear. I was not saying we would delay anything. This is certainly something that I agree that we will do, but I also want to do it right. I don't want it to fail again or to fall by the wayside as it once did. I want it to be, as Lillian rightly pointed out, sustainable once we do it. And so, yes, of course, we should have the discussions at every level with the full council. And, I just suggested the self-determination committee as a possible point of discussion as well, because Lillian's on that committee. And I know that Mike, I know you are agreeable to this as well. And so any place that the discussions can come about and we can get the plan formalized and get things rolling, I'm all for it. And I believe we all are as well. And thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for those comments.
So I guess my question to you would be, which committee would make the motion to form a YLF committee? Would that be the full council that would have to create this ad hoc committee, or would that be the responsibility of the executive committee to form?
We will form an ad hoc committee. The executive committee can do that, and we will do that.
Okay.
So, but what I wanted you to be able to know that you can do is also bring these issues up with your chair of your self-determination committee as well, and make them part of the discussion as well, if you choose to.
So as a point of clarification, would we be able to form that ad hoc committee today during this committee meeting? If y'all would.
I mean, you have my commitment to do it. We'll need to look at how many people you think you'll need, and we'll have to ask for people to participate, which I'll do at the meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
And then we'll formalize the ad hoc once we get those names and get people's availabilities and that sort of thing. So, but you have my commitment. We'll form the ad hoc.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is that all you had for us today?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, like I said, please reach out. I've researched this quite a bit. I attended Oklahoma's YLF virtually last year, planning to attend again this year because it was an incredible experience. Again, I just want to echo Ms. Hyacinth's word. My only concern is I just don't want this to be pushed aside because it kind of has for the past 3 years. So I just would like to get rolling before we,
I understand. Well, we have, as you know, as a council as a whole, we have a lot on our plate right now. But of course, this is very important, and we will work toward getting it started again.
All right. So virtual high five.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lillian, for everything you do. Okay. And so now, Courtney, can you put the agenda back up on the screen? Does the executive committee have any feedback as far as her presentation for me? Or for us?
I just want to say this is exciting. I'm excited for the future, for our youth.
I agree. Thank you, sir. Okay. So having that issue taken care of for today. Let's move on to our, I suppose we move to our legislative advocacy agenda item. Oh, excuse me. It's the public comment on the adopted 5-year plan. So as you know, we had a 45-day comment period for the public to give feedback for our 5-year plan. That was done. And so we do have those public comments available. And Courtney, can you pull those up, please, for our review? So here you see the public comments we received on the screen before you. And again, they're the comments having to do with our public comment having to do with our 5-year plan. And the first one you see there says there are many families across Louisiana who are isolated. They're isolated due to a person in their home with a developmental disability who has behaviors. I have brought up this concern many times over the years. I personally have had these challenges with my own son. I've met countless families with children, adults who are home due to behaviors, who could be thriving out in our communities with appropriate behavioral support. Those behaviors impede their ability to have a fulfilling life. ABA, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis, ends at age 21 in Louisiana. I'm disappointed to learn that the 5-year plan, assuming that behaviors are not part of the DD Council's goals. I'm not sure the council is aware of how many people with developmental disabilities remain home because they have never received behavioral therapy or support for their behaviors. None of the 3 goals is possible for our population of individuals with developmental disabilities and behaviors. I just wanted to share what I hear and see in the community across Southeast Louisiana. Sincerely, Sherry, I'm not sure how to say her last name. I'm sure I'll butcher it, but is it Hewen? Well, so that's our first comment. Our second comment is, good morning. It'd be awesome if the objectives in goal 2, community living and supports, would be accomplished. And that's from Lisa G. Smith. And our third and final comment is, I don't see anything about transition services from pediatric to adult community services section of the 5-year plan. There's both a local and national need for people with disabilities with complex medical needs as they transition from pediatric care to adult care. Here's a good article about the barriers to transition to community services for children with Dravet syndrome. I think I said that correctly. That would apply to any person with complex medical needs. Sincerely, Catherine Hart. Okay, and so those were the 3 public comments we received on the 5-year plan. Do we have any discussion? Courtney, here's a question I have for you. aren't there ways we can address the issues that have been brought up in the comments here within the scope of the 5-year plan we already have, even though they might not be directly mentioned? You have quite a bit of leeway, correct me if I'm wrong, on implementation of the goals. And then, of course, we still have to work on, now that we have the goals, we still have to work on how to achieve those and the steps for that. So could it be that in that process, we address those two major concerns? Or
If
two
you
people
want
with
to
major concerns?
amend your goals, that would require another, it would be a major revision, and we would have to put that out for another 45-day public
Right, that's
comment
not what I'm talking
period.
about. I'm
Right.
talking about within the framework of the goals we already have.
Mhm.
Don't you have the ability, because we haven't even gotten to the nuts and bolts of how we're going to get to those goals, right? We have to have another meeting for that.
Correct. That's for activities. Correct. So
Activities, correct. Thank you.
what's currently being proposed on Thursday is the ratification of the 5-year goals and
Right.
objectives. So activities will be what the planning committee will draft when they convene in either February or March.
So I guess here's my question. Don't you have, even within the 5-year plan that we have before us, that we have worked on and we have before us to approve, don't we have leeway, if you will, on the objectives as far as carrying out? Is there a way we can address some of these concerns without having to modify the 5-year plan to do it, is what I'm asking.
Well, like I said, your activities are on an annual basis. Those can
Right.
change as the council allows. But if the council wants to change their goals or objectives, that's when I actually have to report that to them. we get why we're changing goals and objectives in a 5-year plan that are needed to.
I think you're breaking up a little bit there on
plan that needs to. We need to make, if we want to revise any of the goals or objectives, then we need to do that now. That needs to be done this week. But activities are fluid.
Right.
So as long as it's relatable to our objectives that we have established, then we are still in compliance.
I guess what I'm asking is there a way we can make those forthcoming, just flew out of my head, not goals or objectives, but I mean, yes, look, within the plan we've already got, is there a way to make sure we can address what these two ladies have brought up without changing a single word? Is there a way that you, the staff, that we as a council can work within the framework of the existing plan we've already put out with objectives coming up to hear them, to meet their concerns in any way, in your estimation?
If you're wanting to make those initiatives for the 2022 plan, yes, you can make those initiatives that's being recommended for the 2022 plan.
And they would be within the framework of the 5-year plan, correct?
Correct. There was a reason why we kind of did generic language for our goals and objectives. Exactly.
Because we want to give that flexibility, correct? Yes.
Correct.
And so what I'm saying is, I think there's flexibility there, even though some of these areas were not mentioned specifically. I think flexibility is within this existing plan to address them, and we can do so in the 2022 plan, as Courtney just pointed out.
Correct.
Which is yet to be formulated. But I think that it can be accommodated within the framework of the existing plan before us. Do you agree, Courtney?
I agree.
Okay. Are there any questions?
You would need to bring it before the full council on Thursday's meeting if you want to
Sure.
initiatives. to be recommended for consideration by the planning committee.
Sure. I'll do that. With the executive committee's approval, I plan to do that. Is there any discussion?
Randall, this is Mary.
Yes, Mary. You have the
I
floor.
was going to say the same thing because our education committee met today and we didn't have quorum, and so we had some work that we'll be doing, and the planning committee still got to be, still hasn't met and all that stuff. So I think there's still time for us to do what we need to do to make changes and decide exactly how we can incorporate some of the ideas.
Okay, great. Is there any other feedback? Any questions?
So I guess for clarification's sake, these two concerns will be addressed?
Yes,
Okay.
in the 2022 plan. Their concern was that, like, these things weren't mentioned within the 5-year plan. And they're right, they're not specifically mentioned. However, the 5-year plan as it is written is broad enough to incorporate a number of things as the council sees fit that might not specifically be mentioned there, but we have the power and the authority to address. And the 2022 plan will be the best way, I think, to address some of those issues that the people brought to us in the public comments. Because we've yet to formulate that. And so I think that'd be the best and frankly fastest way to address some of these longstanding issues that were brought before us without having to amend the 5-year plan as written and wait another 45 days and such.
Randall, you have 2 public comments.
Could you please read those for me, Hannah?
Sure. From Miss Kathy Dwyer. There's also the report I sent you from the Dental Task Force for Adults with Disabilities with recommendations to help achieve the Access Healthcare objective.
Yes, ma'am. I do have that report that you sent to me, and thank you very much for that. And I'm still reviewing it, so we will definitely bring that up in our discussions as we move forward with planning.
He also made a second comment saying there's also legislation 2 legislators are working on to be introduced this spring for the Dental Task Force to achieve the recommendation of funding for dental services for adults with DD.
I'm very pleased to hear that. I'm not sure which legislators those are, so if she could provide us with those names. It doesn't have to be here today, but Ms. Kathy, if you could email me with those legislators and their names, I'd be happy to look for that bill when it comes up once they're submitted. As well as possibly speak to them about collaboration on the bill. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I see. She says Rep. Rhonda Butler and Miss Kathy Edmondson are the 2. Okay, thank you very much, Miss Kathy. Any further discussion of public comment on the 5-year plan? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to the legislative advocacy agenda item, which is direct support provider wage increase. And Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, we have data on the raising the base pay by $2, but we don't have data on raising the individual pay. Am I right in saying that? Correct in saying that?
Correct. And we've basically been advised that getting that data would be not possible.
Okay, and who told us that?
That would be Charles Ailes of OCDD, well, LDH, Louisiana Department of Health.
Okay. I just wanted to get that on the record. So the question we have is do we want to go with the ask for the base pay, which we have the data for? And I would recommend if we proceed that that's what we do, since we have the data to back it up. We don't have the data for individual raises, so that would be harder, a much harder ask, I think. But I'm open to comments, questions, and interpretations. I believe the other issue we have with this is we need to figure out a way to determine what a livable wage is, correct, Courtney? We don't have a defined amount for what would be considered a livable wage.
Correct. Well, there's actually three things that we need to get clarification on with this legislative advocacy agenda item.
Okay.
Number one was to clarify if we want all home and community-based services providers to receive a $2 an hour wage increase, which would include OCDD and OAAS, Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, and Office of Aging and Adult Services. If not, then we just need to collect data from one of those entities. We needed to establish if we wanted the $2 an hour wage increase to be applied to base pay versus $2 an hour to current salary, which would be almost impossible to calculate.
Right.
And we also needed to decide what was considered a living wage, a competitive livable wage, because without that, there's no way to calculate how much
The numbers, right?
How much that ask would be.
Correct. So what feedback, if any, do y'all have for us, council? Anybody have any questions? Comments?
Hey, Randall, it's Mary again.
Yes, Mary, you have the floor.
I guess I needed to be I know that we had talked about this before, but who is it? Just the DD Council that is kind of leading the charge on this, or are there other people that we're partnering with to help advocate for this, for whatever changes? Because I don't want us to be asking for one thing and then another group that's interested in asking for something else, and we're not talking the same language. Do you know? Wasn't there somebody else that was advocating for this as well?
Courtney, would you like to answer that?
I have actually been apprised that there are actual entities that are not going to be requesting this because they know of the financial cost related to this
Right.
task, and that it would be inappropriate to ask for that kind of funding during this next legislative session. So I haven't heard of anyone who is on board with requesting this ask. We have had collaboration with our cameras bill, that legislative agenda item. So I don't know if maybe that may have been something that we had discussed, but we are not working with any other entity regarding the direct support professional wage increase.
And again, we don't have our numbers calculated, and that's what we're attempting to do. But we do know it'd be a very large ask, particularly the more
Randall,
people we add into it. Yes, sir, Brenton.
sorry, this is Brenton. We do have numbers.
Okay, could you please share those?
If you were adding in aging and adult services and office of citizens with developmental disabilities, if you're looking at both of those departments, your state general fund would be $45 million. So total funding for OAAS is 65 million. So their portion of that state general fund would be 21 million. And for OCDD, it'd be about 75 million total all-in funding for an SGF of about 24 million. And that's just for that year. And that would be to raise it to the minimum of $9.25 base pay. Or nine, I forget what the state minimum wage, the federal minimum wage is. It's $7.25, so it'll go up to $9.25.
Right, correct. And I believe I made clear, when we discussed our legislative agenda, my concern, and the vice chair made this clear as well at our last quarterly meeting. We made clear that we did feel like, there will be a lot of potential cuts. We're not sure where yet or how much, but I'm very deeply concerned about that and still am. But we have before us what the council, instructed us to do. And so in order to carry out the legislative ask, we have to have our formula set and have our, ducks in a row as far as what our ask is. And so that's what this item is attempting to have us do today. Again, I echo the sentiment that all of it's needed. The question, there's no doubt about that. I don't think for anyone. The question is, in our current economic climate with COVID and such affecting our economic health as a state, is this a prudent ask of our legislature at this time? I think the council made clear at our last meeting that it is, that they think that they want us to move forward with it. In doing so, Brenton just gave you some numbers. So that's a very large ask, about a $45 million ask if we include both areas, both departments that include waivers for our populations that we serve. So that is a very large number to be asking for in any year. I think in particular this legislative year is even bigger hurdle. I fundamentally do believe, but I mean it's where we are, and so as a executive committee, do we recommend the inclusion of both or just one? The OCDD, the Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, and the Aging and Adult Services, or together, or do we ask for one? And what's y'all's feeling on asking? Do we have any questions or comments, y'all?
You have
I mean-
some. Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
Mary.
If we have to move forward with this, then I would say that we need to just look at the OCDD, and I don't know what the impact of the administrative change is going to be, but there's been talk of a change with the federal minimum
Wage.
so that may have an impact on this as well. So I guess that would be my comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, there are a couple of public comments if you would like.
Can we please read that? If the council has no further pressing question, can we please read those?
Yes, Mr. Harlan Kauser said if the president raises the minimum wage to $15 per hour, we need to consider how it will affect DSPs.
Yes, sir. Good point.
Ms. Kelly Monroe said if you are making this a mandate to providers, you will need to take into consideration all cost of a wage increase that the providers will have. The providers will not be interested if you do not have something in the bill that will prevent the department from taking the money back after raises have been given.
Thank you, Kelly, for that feedback.
And Miss Kathleen Canino said, under the ask for cameras, can we please ask that they include cameras for seclusion rooms / areas?
Noted, Kathleen. Thank you.
You also have Miss Kathy Dwyer with her hand raised.
Yes, Miss Kathy, you have the floor. Miss Kathy Dwyer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add to what Mary Tarver said. In addition to this discussion of minimum wage being raised at the federal level, there's also discussion about a bill.
I think we lost Miss Kathy.
Ask, then
Okay,
not
Miss-
ask, and there end up being funds left over. So that's
Right.
just
Unfortunately,
my
Miss
thoughts
Kathy,
on it.
Miss Kathy, we lost you there except for that last sentence or two. So could you, I hate to ask you to do it, but could you repeat your comment there to us?
I can't hear you.
We lost our connection with you. We can hear you now, but we lost connection during your comments.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now. You have the floor.
Did you hear any of my comments, or should I start over?
You might want to start over. We got about the first few sentences in and lost you.
Okay, thank you. I was saying it said about the discussion at the federal level to increase federal minimum wage to $15. There is also discussion about sending federal aid to states and local government entities to help of COVID. So that will help the budget short may be experiencing. Continue to ask in the event
I'm sorry, we lost you again. I have to assume you mean that in the event we're given federal aid, that the ask is already on the table. If you could just, let me know if that's what you intend. I would assume that is it, but I'm making that assumption on my own. So if you could confirm with us that that's what you're asking is for us to think about having the ask on the table with the legislature in the event that the federal funding comes in to help with the budget shortfalls. And I hate to put words in anyone's mouth. I'm assuming that must be what her comment is. And again, Miss Kathy, we lost you, so that's why I'm commenting on it. Are there any other comments? Okay, she said yes, but her connection is still poor. Noted, Miss Kathy. I think we understand what you're asking of us, and your ask is noted. Are there any other comments, Hannah or Courtney?
No, sir.
Okay. So how do we as an executive committee feel about the issue in general? Do we want to recommend based on what we know is the will of the council from last meeting, to proceed? Do we want to recommend one or both? If we choose to recommend, we have to decide, do you want to ask for one population, which would be OCDD, or the Office of Aging and Adult Services also has waivers and needs? So do you want to ask for one set or both? Or in light of the cost, do we want to recommend to the council that we reconsider this issue entirely on Thursday?
Randall, it's Mike.
Yes, Mike.
I think it would behoove us to reconsider it on Thursday with full council.
I agree with you, sir. Any other feedback? Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Randall, y'all will have like the costs that we know of now so that can be presented to the council so everybody understands the money amount.
Just like we just did. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
The same presentation we gave to y'all, we will give to the full council, and we'll discuss it as a whole. My question to y'all as a body is, do you want to make a recommendation to the council, or do you want to just leave it up for discussion to be reconsidered in light that we now have numbers? Do you want to make a recommendation to say, like we want to, in keeping with the council's wishes from last meeting, we would recommend one or both, or we would recommend, do we want to make a recommendation to the body, or do we want to just leave it open for discussion?
Leave it open for discussion.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, are you in agreement? Madam Vice Chair, excuse me, are you in agreement? I promoted you.
Dr. McKee, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you in agreement?
I apologize for that. I did have some connection difficulties, but yes, I'm in agreement.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because I want us to be unanimous in our decision.
Miss Kelly Monroe has her hand raised.
Yes, Kelly, you have the floor.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to also just keep in mind that if you leave the Office of Aging, the Department of the Office of Aging out, that you'll be causing a disparity on that side. What will happen is the DSPs who are working for OCDD will move over, OAS will move over and go work for OCDD individuals. And that would cause a huge disparity. And that is one of the reasons why when we went to go doing the restoring the rate back to 2008, that we included both departments because we did not want to cause this disparity. Also, the Office of Aging, their rate reimbursement is much lower than developmental disabilities. And so that would cause even more of a problem than it already is right now. So I would just hope that you would take that in consideration. And then also take in consideration that when they did the $2 wage pass through before, the department, after 6 months of it in place, they took the money back away from providers, and providers still had to pay that $2. So I would hope that you guys would put something in the bill that would prevent the department from taking that money away from providers, so that they would be able to continue to pay their employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Your comments are noted. I do happen to concur that if we were to ask, I think you should ask for both because we don't want to create a disparity. But there again, everyone knows full well my position on the legislative agenda as a whole in terms of it's going to be a big ask. And so we need to be aware of that. And now we know a little bit more of exactly how big an ask it would be. So, that's certainly something we'll have to have a vigorous debate about. And everyone's comments are noted and respected. Okay, so this issue will be brought up for discussion tomorrow. Excuse me, not tomorrow, Thursday, at Thursday's council meeting. We will bring this up for reconsideration to the full council. And as I stated, that we will essentially present the same data I just gave you all today, but we'll do so in a way that allows everyone to debate it. So do we have any other comments or questions?
Miss Bambi Polazola has a comment.
Could you please read it for us, Ann?
Yes, she said there are legal issues with requiring pay rates. This issue was discussed at length at council meetings over the past several years.
Thank you for bringing that up, Bambi. You're right. And thank you for getting that on the record. It's one of the reasons why I think it's important for the full council to have this discussion on Thursday. Any other questions or comments on this issue? Okay, hearing none, do we have any other comments from the public?
Miss Kelly Monroe says, yes, Julie was involved in that conversation.
Yes. And yet again, that's one good reason why we should have this conversation before the full council, so everyone can be present and give their feedback and input as we make this very important decision. Okay, so do we have any other? I think that concludes our business for today's meeting. Do we have any public comment?
Randall.
Yes.
Hey, hey, I just wanted to mention that today we had our
Education.
Education and Employment Committee meeting, and we did not have quorum. We had 4 members that were missing, and we did go ahead and go through the agenda. Of course, we can't make any recommendations to the full council on Thursday, but I wanted us to, get an overall picture about what's going on. Are we having that happen a lot? I know Zoom is in some ways it makes it easier, in some ways it makes it more difficult, but I was just wanted to reach out and see how the other committees were doing on their quorum and meeting quorum, and if there's anything that we, need to look at overall, like, I guess we're still tracking attendance and that kind of stuff.
Yes, we were required to. I can tell you from the standpoint of, and that's one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant when Lillian was talking about needing a committee for throughout this whole year of almost a year now of the pandemic having us on Zoom, is it is very difficult to get a quorum for any of these meetings. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't automatically say, yes, absolutely, we'd have a meeting, in exactly when today, because I'd have to look at when is she best available to, meet with us, because I definitely want her involved, Lillian involved in every aspect of that committee, should there be one, and there now will be one. But yeah, it's been a pretty good challenge to make sure we have quorums for our committee meetings for some time now. So I don't know if there's anything we can particularly do that we're not already attempting to do, but I'm open to anything. This is, it's harder, I know, because we have to spread these meetings out over a number of days where we normally have a 2-day cycle, and we're present and we know when it'll be months in advance and everyone's aware. And so and can make their plans. It's harder and more fluid in the case of Zoom for a number of reasons. Everybody's technology access is different. Weather plays a large factor. And so those things don't go away as long as we're Zooming. They'll be something we have to consider. But yeah, I know for me, in deciding when to set up various meetings, yes, quorum is an issue. And I'm sorry that today's committee didn't have the quorum it needed to conduct business, but I think that Bessie also met today, did they not? I believe so.
Well, we had 4 members that were not present. I don't know if any of them had anything to do with the Bessie meeting. We did, agree that we would look at their calendar before we set the next meetings. And, I'm open to that, but we, in some aspects, I wonder if we didn't do a disservice to ourselves at the beginning, because we were like, oh, well, we'll just schedule it whenever. And maybe it should be, just re-looked at or rediscussed, like, okay, well, should all of our meetings still try to be, around those same days that we normally would have had our in-person meetings, for those 2 days? I don't know. I'm just saying, this has been a year. And we're, should we take time to kind of review how things have gone. And I guess maybe if we had some data, like how many meetings have we had to cancel, and that, I don't know necessarily data, but I mean, just in general, kind of have a rundown. And maybe
To my knowledge, today's education committee meeting is only the second meeting in all the meetings we've had that I think a quorum wasn't eventually obtained. Potentially the third. I think one of our executive director meetings had to be rescheduled as well. So I think it's either been 2 or 3. It hasn't been a huge number considering how many meetings we've had, but it is a problem that as a chair you constantly encounter in the Zoom environment. It is.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better that it's not been.
Honestly, I think a lot of that is just fatigue. People are just tired of being on Zooms, and
Yeah,
this is the way of life nowadays. And
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of fatigue setting in.
For being honest here, I think that's what it is. A lot of
You're
fatigue.
fun.
Well, I think we also have the challenges still of with COVID. I know in my household, I've had kids quarantined multiple times, and then work schedule and
Right.
schedules and medical appointments you're juggling for everybody. So it's difficult to, and
Well, that's one of the reasons we talk about, why we had it in the beginning where it's more fluid as far as what days we could set up to have meetings, is because of COVID and its constraints, which we can all agree is not much better than it was a year ago when we looked at this, or nearly a year now. So, it's just a problem. I think that's going to be the new normal as long as we're on Zoom for our business. But I certainly acknowledge, it's always fluid. We can always look at ways to change and improve, how we carry out the business during this phase.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to prepare everybody for our Thursday meeting that my our
Right.
an education committee will.
And ultimately, let me say, and I don't want to be the bad guy here because we're all volunteers, and I understand how much we all juggle. I think every member of the council has to juggle a lot in this normally, but in this environment in particular, I think we all have a lot on our plates. But ultimately, it's every member's responsibility. They know they're members of the committees, and they know we give plenty of time notice as to when those are meeting, and usually those are conducted because we have asked or polled in most cases who would be available. Now, in some cases, not so much with these standing committees, but I know with ad hoc committees, I always have a doodle poll, and I try to pick the times where the most people said they could attend to avoid this issue. So it might just be that we send out a doodle poll before we schedule the next education committee meeting and self-determination, to just send out a poll of these are potential dates for the meeting. Are you available?
Yeah, I think we'll work on that for sure. I think that's a good suggestion. And I do think that the Zoom, it's great because this was kind of what we were leaning and trying to figure out how to make work so that people could, the DD community could be part of the meeting. So I think there's been some
absolutely
big pluses. So
yeah, it's
to make sure that we were reporting back in so y'all would know if any of our committees were having other issues.
Thank you for that, and I hope y'all can reschedule at some point to have your meeting to get your work conducted.
And then if any of the new members of the council have decided what committees that they were going to be on, and just looked at what our makeup of the committees are to make sure.
Right. That's one thing I was going to stress. They still have this next meeting is the meeting where I'm going to bring that up. Because I wanted to give them time to consider what committees they would like. But before I officially appoint anyone, I always look at the makeup of each committee before I make it official.
Okay.
So you have my pledge. I'll do that in this case for the new members as well. Although we want everyone to be where they feel like they can best contribute, we also want to make sure everything is balanced as best we can. So, all right. So we will definitely look at sending out doodle polls before we schedule the standing committee meetings as we continue the Zoom environment.
Mike Billings has his hand raised and you.
Yes, Mike, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just was looking at attendance and of this meeting, and for the year prior to COVID, at our executive committee member meetings, we would typically have maybe 1 to 4 members of the public
Right.
who would come to our meeting, and they were usually all from the commuting area of Baton Rouge. I mean, I don't know where all these attendees are from, but we definitely get a lot more via Zoom, a lot more participation, and we appreciate y'all.
We do.
All these meetings.
And that's why I try to stress, thank everyone for attending, because I do understand that everyone is taking the time to be here, give their feedback, and be an active part of the community, and we welcome it. So, but in doing so, we want to make sure we have the quorums legally necessary to conduct our business. So I think we can resolve what happened today if we just send out a doodle poll prior to us scheduling the meetings for the quarterly meetings. I know I do the same. We do that mostly for every other meeting we do. And I take a look at who says they're available on what days and try to see which one will most likely provide us the quorum we need before I schedule it. So we can do the same for our standing committees. We just haven't until today needed to. So I guess nearly a year later, that's a success. Even though today, I'm sorry y'all couldn't meet, Mary, but in general, I think it's going pretty well in terms of quorums and attendance for the quarterly meetings.
You have a few public comments.
Yes. Can you read those for me?
Sure. Ms. Bambi Polazola said one member who is absent said that she needed more notice of meeting date and time in order to schedule off work.
Okay. Noted, Bambi. Thank you.
Ms. Kathy Dwyer said, I love the accessibility of Zoom. I would not be able to participate as the public. And Ms. Karanda Corley asked, when will the diversity committee be formed and start meeting?
The diversity committee will be formed very shortly after we finish the business of this quarter. It's one of those things that's extremely important. It's one of those things I would like to ask our vice chair if she graciously would to chair for us. And so I'd like to be able to get with her and to select a membership of that committee that's reflective of its work. And so I do apologize that it has not yet been done, but it's the first thing on my priority list for the next quarter, essentially. We're going to start on just as soon as we conclude the business of these quarterly meetings. And that's only because we ran out of months before we ran out of year before we ran out of things that are a priority to do. And this certainly is a very big priority, and I don't want it to get left behind. So it will take center stage for me as soon as this quarterly meetings are concluded. Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I do not see any hands raised, and I do not see any other chats in the chat box.
I thank you all for your time today. Thank you, committee, for your time and attention and your feedback today. You're all extremely important to the work we do, and I appreciate you more than you know and more than I'm able to tell you. As I should. This committee is very important to the work of the full council, and every one of you I know have a heart for the work, and I'm grateful for you and grateful to serve with you. And to our public, we welcome you, we welcome your feedback, and we thank you for being with us today. Hearing no other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Nguyen moves to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Stephen's motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Mike Billings seconds. Do I have any objection to our motion for adjournment? Hearing no objection.